because we wanted the world. The world is hard and difficult enough, and we want that. We wanted to show a strong family unit with the outside pressures of a real world that we all deal with, kind of coming in on them, rather than the Batman and Robin, where it's the inner turmoil, pushing outward from their relationship. And it's something that I think it's really been nice, because I've had so many families, and a lot of fathers and sons, or sons that said, like, I shared this with my dad, or my dad shared this with me, and we read this together. And it's like, wow, really? That's
well, I mean, as a
that's hard to hear.
Aside, my father was a huge Superman fan.
Yeah.
He passed in 2009, and but my father and I always had that bond to Superman, always. For your run with Superboy and Superman has just been great for me.
Thank you.
And I also like the arc a little while ago where they went to the alien planet, when he's trying to show Jonathan the destruction of Krypton, where he had the.
You're talking about Robinson's, the James Robinson issues? There were 2 issues.
That was
that was James Robinson wrote those 2 stories.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, that was my mistake.
That's okay.
I'm terrible.
Hey, look, it's a bi-weekly book, and we got behind, so it happened.
Yeah, well, honestly, I mean, they send them to us, and we review them, and I just read through them, and I sometimes regrettably don't always check credits.
Well, I can talk about it, obviously, but I don't want to take credit for it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that some of that stuff's going to carried over after that arc into the stuff you guys did. But I was wondering, seems to be they're getting more like into Raoul and Superman's belief in higher power and his belief in a god.
Right.
And I was wondering if that came from anywhere. If anybody's personal experience of teaching a child about religion.
Well, it's funny because no offense to James, but that was the one sticking point, because we didn't really have any say on that. And I think that in my mind, Superman definitely has a history and a past that I think you get into a weird place when you mix like actual people's actual faith and beliefs into a fictional thing, whether you fall on you believe it or you think it's false. Either way, it just kind of muddies the water.
It didn't seem like there'd been any mention of that earlier on, and then all of a sudden you get these 2 issues where he's teaching Jonathan about Raoul and God.
Right. It was funny because the place that I always came from with Superman is, he's from Krypton, so he's got the heritage of Raoul and all that, just like any immigrant from another country. But he was raised in a Midwest. I would assume, I don't know if they actually ever said a Christian home, but we see them going to church, and like in the movie they go to Man of Steel. I don't think it ever gets into there, but I think it's
the denomination vague,
right. I think it's implied there's a belief in a God, right? And this is that kind of a thing. So
most Midwestern.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's a weird thing to try and deal with in 2 issues. I think James, did what he thought was right in that. I would have amended some of it a little bit personally, just in the way I see Superman in that conversation, which I think it's a weird. That's a whole other podcast. But then, ironically, though, then in the next issue, I'm writing this completely on not knowing. I didn't know the story, the James Robinson story. We were never shown it by DC.
So there's no back and forth between you guys, like, I'm going to do this. And
No, it was all editorial. But then in the next issue, I had John praying, trying to fall asleep, and so there's this bit where he's doing his "Now I Lay Me Down to Sleeps" in there, and so it kind of all worked together, I guess. I think it's just what it is the difference of like I don't want to say cynicism, but when you get into like Batman and stuff like that, it's very black and white. Everything's like that. I think Superman's more about hope, optimism, that looking for the good in things. And so I think that the spiritual side of it could play a little better in there. I don't know.
Now the last thing I want to ask is, Action Comics 1000's coming out, big milestone, and you've got a story in there.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be on first of all, it's such a milestone in comic books, and then also kind of coming up on the end of the Superman run for you?
I know it's funny because it's like I remember. For people who don't know, I used to be Doug Mankey's assistant, and now we work together on Superman, and it's awesome. But when I was his assistant, he was working on Action Comics 775, with Joe Kelly, which was the introduction of Manchester Black. What's so great about Truth, Justice, and the American Way, which is still one of my favorite Superman stories. And I remember thinking then, like, wow, 775, like, and I remember like doing the math, like, when will you guys, are you going to be on it until issue 1000? Like, that'll be the year 2018 or whatever it was. So being able to like be on that book is amazing to me. I don't feel like, I feel like there's so many other people that should have a place before me. But I do appreciate that people like what we've done and on with Superman Rebirth, and so we really just, honestly, I just want to do my best, the best art I can do in that on Pete's story, and to be able to stand alongside all these greats that are in this book. It's like, it's amazing when I see the lineup. I'm just like, this is like dream come true time, you know, like, pinch me, ma, like, I'm dreaming.
One of those I've made it comics.
Yeah, it really is, and it's the really cool thing is, look, I've also preceded this by 2 years on a book of Superman that started with Dan Jurgens and Lee Weeks on Lois and Clark, which was bringing this, in my mind, the true Superman back to fans, and so, and then giving us a book to go alongside him on Action. Spend 2 years on it, develop these characters, and grow this story, and really get to do some of like some really really nice Superman moments in my mind. I really was into just to kind of end it all with this Action 1000. It's just amazing. It's really great. So I feel really grateful to be able to do a Superman book that fans like, and new fans of Superman. People are coming to me saying, I've never read Superman before, but I'm reading it now. I'm like, that's great. Like, I don't know how often that happens. So I feel really, really, really blessed and privileged to do it.
So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you guys.
So that was one fantastic interview with Pat Gleason. It was, what I thought was really cool about that is we were right there at the DC booth for that. We were like in this like VIP cutoff area of the booth.
Yeah, they gave us like director chairs to sit in.
Yeah,
with Pat Gleason.
And we kind of sandwiched Pat Gleason. You were on one side, I was on the other, and it's fun because we're like passing the recorder back and forth.
Yeah, well, Pat Gleason held the recorder for part of the interview.
Yeah,
he was holding it for us. I was like, oh, you want me to take that? You don't have to hold it. And he's like, no, it's fine. But yeah, he's a really cool guy. But you'll have to forgive me and Spin, because this. A lot of really cool things happened at this con, and it was kind of our first like big, like where we were actually getting invites to do some of these kinds of things, and so it was really. You'll have to forgive us if we fanboy out a little bit on some of the stuff, because, and we can't act like we've been there before, because we haven't been there before.
The only thing, like, you've heard interviews that I've done solo at like Virginia Comic-Con, but those they're mostly I walk up to the person and say, "Hey, can I get like a 5 to 10 minute interview with you?" It's not
this is like we
where
had press conferences and premieres and crazy shit going on, so we're a little giddy,
just a little bit, especially with the next interview. He's actually at this point he's an old friend of the show's almost. He was on our original show we had.
Yeah.
And then he was on this show not too long ago. Cullen Bunn sat down with us on day 3 of the con. Really?
I wish we could have got Jimmy Z over there.
We're gonna get him on the show proper though. We're gonna get
that'd be cool. He's a really cool guy. And I got to say before we get into this. When we were waiting to set up with Cullen, we stood there and talked to Jimmy Johnson, or Jimmy Z as he's known in the comic cover world. But he's co-writing The Tick with Cullen, and he was at the table, and he let us sit there and bullshit comics with him for a good 35 minutes. Yeah. Wait, because Cullen was at a panel, and he was trying to make his way through the con floor, and I'm sure he was getting stopped by everybody. And people were talking to him, and it took him a while to get back. So while we were waiting, Jimmy was really super cool to us, and I just wanted to say that, just to give a shout out to Jimmy.
Definitely.
But very cool.
And then Cullen was like, "Hey, if you can come back first thing the next day," because we talked to him on day 2, He said, come back on day 3, we'll do the interview. So this is where we kind of, last week, if you heard our kind of ways to improve the con with press being able to get, like, through the lines a little bit quicker, we had to wait in the bullpen on Sunday with everybody else, that, all the general admission. And as soon as they cut, like, the ribbon to let everybody in, I mean, we bolted to Artist Alley and bolted to Cullen Bunn's.
We caught him right in the nick of time, like perfect, a perfect opportunity, and we had plenty of time to get what we needed and get out before the crowd rushed in.
So you're going to hear us talk about some X-Men Blue, because he's been writing X-Men Blue. We're going to be talking The Tick, and we're going to talk about Harrow County, which is his book that just wrapped up at Image, and then what's coming next from Cullen Bunn. So back to the con floor, Artist Alley, row M for Cullen Bunn.
First of all, Cullen, thank you for taking the time with us again to be on our show again.
Happy to be here. Again.
Yes. You've had so much stuff come out since last time we talked. X-Men Blue has been out for a while now. And you got Harrow County.
Yes.
And The Tick.
The Tick, yeah, a lot of books, man. I gotta keep hustling.
That was one of my questions. Like, how do you write so much stuff? How do you keep it all straight?
So, you know what? Honestly, sometimes I don't. So don't be surprised if you see the Tick running around in X-Men Blue at some point. But it's some days are easier than others. I do try to keep a lot of folders and organize my stuff into different. I keep all my information organized into folders, both on the computer and in hard copy. But also I usually only work on one project on a given day. So I won't be doing multiple things multiple books in one day, because then it just it becomes real messy in my head.
Gotcha.
With X-Men Blue, we'll start off there. Taking the original X-Men that have been time displaced, but also throwing in new characters like Bloodstorm and all these other characters. What has been the process of bringing in these newer characters? Bloodstorm, the Ultimate Wolverine, and then the time travel. Still making these characters still fresh and kind of different than their original counterparts.
Right. It's when I was assigned this book, I was told this is the original 5 X-Men. And I pitched different teams. I was like, let me tell you a different team that we could use. And it's not that I don't like the original 5 X-Men. It was that they weren't my X-Men that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
When I really got into X-Men, it was the Claremont team.
Like most of us.
Yeah. And so I'll be honest, I railed against the original 5 a little bit. But I was quickly told, nope, it's the original 5 or you're not doing the book. I was like, all right, well then I guess it's the original 5. And so once I resigned myself that that's what it was going to be, I just said, well, now I just want to tell what I consider classic X-Men stories with those characters. So I wanted to go into the stories that you might not have expected to see the original 5 in. And that's how you make it fresh, or you make it your own. I'm not going to tell the same story as someone else, I hope. So I just try to put my spin on those characters, and then adding Jimmy, Hudson, and Bloodstorm. I knew I wanted to add a couple of characters to the group at some point, and I kind of just I had other choices. There were other characters I thought about adding in there because I love the mutant universe so much. I love all those characters. So I'd add every character I could if but I decided to stick with a theme for those characters, and the theme being the original five are all out of place. They're not where they should be, and they all in theory have a counterpart. I know Cyclops right now doesn't, but they all have a counterpart. And Jean Grey didn't. There's another version of those characters in existence. So I wanted to put characters in that there were other versions of those characters in existence, and that's why we got Bloodstorm, who is a duplicate Storm, and Jimmy Hudson, who is technically a duplicate Wolverine, because it fit in with the theme of duplicate characters. They were out of place because they're either from another world or another time, and there is another counterpart for them somewhere out there.
And now you've brought back the old Brotherhood with the Old Man Deadpool and all of them,
Yes.
bringing back, I believe it was Bendis who wrote that in the
Bendis
Battle of the
created
Atom.
those, yeah.
So, and we haven't seen them in a while now. They're